We all know the economic conditions in Nigeria. If two persons rent a room and they live together, now can you immediately assume that they are living together as husband and wife? Who determines who is the husband and who determines who is the wife? So you find that with this law in place, we have had many cases of attacks on persons belonging to the LGBTI community. Only 2 days ago, there was a report that somebody was attacked because his brother was suspected to be homosexual. Now, it's not even the perceived offender that is being attacked, it's his brother. Because the law in section 4, I think, or section 5, talks about whoever aids or abets. So by just innocently associating with anybody, you expose yourself to possible attack. There have been reported cases of assumed alleged homosexuals being arrested by the police, and the police will not even bother to charge them to court. They will brutalize them or just lock them up. And once you have that kind of situation, and if we all agree that equality before the law is a right of every living being, then of course there is ground for continued advocacy. But that continued advocacy will require also the education of the public. Part of the problem we have in this country with regard to human rights has to do with ignorance. A lot of people are ignorant about their own rights and about the rights of others. And that is why I think that NGOs, non-state actors, can still do a lot in terms of educating the public.
So what's your take on jungle justice or when it comes to LGBT people in Nigeria?
Jungle justice is condemnable, is reprehensible, is unacceptable. Whether it relates to the LGBTI community or any other citizen, nobody has the right to take the laws into their hands. If there is anything that is described as an offense in the eyes of the law, it is the rule of law that should take effect, not for individuals to construe themselves into the judge and jury. And such acts of impunity erode the dignity of the human person, violate the rights of persons. And my position is that where such impunities take place, the persons should be apprehended and they should be punished, and the victims should be allowed access to justice. Because it's because such acts of impunity go unpunished that people repeat it. I mean, you may not like somebody's face, that does not give you the right to attack the person, to be violent. And there are various laws, both the Constitution and other enabling legislations, such as Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act.
How do you think the law can be repealed on SNCP?
Well, I mean, already there have been many calls, many protests, even by the African Court on Human and People's Rights, to say that the kind of abuses that have resulted on account of that law violate, devalue the human person. And a major fallout of this conversation that we have had today is that there must be follow-up actions in terms of engagement, in terms of education, in terms of empowerment, and particularly in terms of engaging the lawmakers to see where the issues are and what needs to be done. But above all, government has a responsibility to protect, to respect, and to empower every citizen in terms of equality before the law, in terms of justice, in terms of dignity, in terms of the freedom to enjoy all those rights listed in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. That's sections 33 to 45.
You said homosexuals are pedophiles, so I want to know what has changed since then.
I'm being quoted out of context, and I've tried to explain that, to say that at the time I appeared on a program on Al Jazeera, it was part of my job as spokesman to explain the law to the public, okay, when the issue came up, because the President Jonathan having signed that bill into law in January 2014. So the issue came up, and it was very controversial at that time, and it's still even controversial now. And the National Assembly that passed the law Part of the explanation they came up with then was about, oh, this is consistent with our people's culture and our people's values and religion, and it's a reflection of our cultural environment. Okay, but we have seen a lot of development since then, and I believe, and I am convinced that the attack on gay persons in Nigeria, the express violation of their rights, either in form of police brutality or persons taking the law into their hands, is unacceptable, because the Constitution recognizes that everybody is equal before the law, and nobody can be subjected to any form of punishment or harassment or blackmail except within the eye of the law. But society is dynamic, law is made for society, and the debate on homosexuality in Nigeria is evolving, just as society itself will evolve. So a time may well come when the law will be repealed or the law will be amended. But advocacy is important, engagement is important.
Do you think it's soon? It's going to be soon?
Well, you can't put a time on it, but this is why this kind of conversation is important. And I'm glad that, the LGBTI community in Nigeria has made the conversation open and inclusive. Because when I was invited to come and speak here, there were persons who said, oh, we don't want to see Reuben Abati. Reuben Abati is a homophobe, he's a bigot, he's an oppressor and all that. And I had to point out that any of those labels do not apply to me. We are all members of the same human community, and we all have a right to support human rights. We all have a right to insist on the inviolability of human rights.
What do you think can be done to repeal the SSCMPA law in Nigeria?
I mean, the only thing you can do to repeal a law is to go to court. You have to go to court to challenge a law in court. But I don't think it's only repeal that we need. We need a broad spectrum of education so even when you're in court, people understand why you're in court. Because if there's no clear understanding and education, you go to court and people don't understand why you're in court, because already there's a lot of misunderstanding around the law. So if this misunderstanding still continues and you go to court to ask for repeal or ask for review, people will be disconnected from that reality. And I don't think it's a space that we want to get to. So, we can do a lot of it by going to court, but also do a lot of it by educating Nigerians.
During the event, you said Mr. Reuben called homosexuals pedophiles. So I wanted to clarify the issue, because he said he never said something like that people are saying. So I want to know what really happened.
I mean, it was on an interview on Al Jazeera with other prominent activists, and then he said a lot of things that a lot of community felt, a lot of the LGBT persons felt were really quite unpleasant, and that is a reality. Now the reality is that he said those things, and he's here today is another reality on his own. Is the fact that people are changing their views, a lot of people are changing their opinion, and we must give space to that kind of space for conversation. I don't think there is anywhere at the moment now, and correct me if I'm wrong, in Nigeria or a platform like this where we can actually have this conversation. So we have to create that platform for them to have that conversation, and in a way that they don't feel threatened, in a way that they know that okay, we made mistake, and we're willing to address those mistakes. And I think that's what we're particularly about.
What's your take on young justice on LGBT in Nigeria?
I mean, my take on young justice generally across the board is horrible. Whether for LGBT persons or whether for non-LGBT persons, it is an horrible idea. It reduces our humanity, it reduces our value as a human, and we have to begin to question that kind of sense, that kind of ideology that says to us that jungle justice is the right way to go. Whether for LGBT or not for LGBT, we must challenge jungle justice across all platforms. And for me, that's one of the things that I don't find really interesting. And I said to people, anybody who think jungle justice is the right thing to do for LGBT person, it's not about them being afraid of LGBT person. It says a lot about their individual as a person. It shows how oppressive they can be when they have power.
What's your message to the Nigerian people?
My message to Nigerian people is clear. Let's dialogue around the subject. It's not about religion, it's not about culture, it's about human. And that human could be your brother, it could be your sister, it could be your cousin, it could be your nephew, it could be your friend, it could be your colleague, it could be anybody. Because it doesn't come closer home today doesn't mean it can't come closer home tomorrow. So we have to first of all understand the community, understand what people want. People just want to be human. And that's the most important. There's something in the power of being who you are. We shouldn't force people to a space where they have to start acting for us. Acting doesn't help any one of us. So my message in Nigeria is, let's understand LGBT people. Let's understand what their issue is. Let's understand why they keep shouting for equality. And most importantly, let's understand that equality has no barricade. It belongs to straight, it belongs to gay, it belongs to bisexual, it belongs to every single human. It's about human. It's not about sexual, gender role and all. It's about human being. And first, before people were gay, they were human. So you have to see it from that point. And I think that's my message to Nigeria. See people as human, let them be humanized and not sexualized.
People usually say people were not born gay. So I want you to clarify the issue.
I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a clinician, I'm not a scientist, but I say to people are born the way they are. And the ideology we need to cast ourselves is that if people are not born gay, and you live in a society like Nigeria where homosexuality is criminalized, where there are like 3 layers of law, there's a criminal penal code, there's a Sharia law, there's a census marriage prohibition act, and you will wake up in your right thinking sense and decide to become an LGBT person. Who does that? Why would you choose something that already been oppressed in an oppressive society? People are just who they are, and I think that is our own inability to accept who they are that makes us really uncomfortable about who they are. So we have a lot of the job to do, and when I mean we, even LGBT themselves, we as LGBT people have a lot to do. General public have a lot to do. It's about us understanding that people are the way they are.